Hey guys, welcome back. Today let's talk about Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. So this is book 2 of the Bellinger Sisters series. The first one came out in 2021 and it was It Happened One Summer. So there's only 2 sisters, Piper and Hannah. So like the series I think is probably over, but so this is your like kind of spoiler warning for probably both books, but mainly Hook, Line, and Sinker, which is the one that came out in March of 2022. Also, before we dive into the video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want more book videos. So book 1 of this series was, like I said, It Happened One Summer, and this focused on the sister Piper, and she was sent to like this small town, like fishing town called Westport, as like a punishment from her stepfather to like go there and kind of live on her own and basically like understand like the value of $1. And her sister, Hannah, came with her in the first book to this city of Westport to kind of help her and like be with her. And in the first book, Piper falls in love with this sea captain, which I loved the idea for the first book. I didn't particularly like love the first book. It was still a good read, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is the best book ever. Like I didn't really love Piper. I thought she was kind of over the top and I couldn't really like relate with her very well. But during that book, we got to see a lot of her sister, Hannah. And I really liked Hannah. Like, I feel like I connected with her more than Piper. So like when I learned that there was going to be a second book that was focusing on her, I was super into it. And I was very excited to read this book. And so the male lead character in Hook, Line, and Sinker is Brendan's friend, Fox. And we got to see Hannah and Fox like interact in the first book, just because they were kind of like thrown in situations together because of Piper and Brendan. And so you kind of knew where it was going, like the fact that there was going to be like a love story like based on them, because like she definitely set it up in the first book. So kind of getting into like the beginning setup of like Hook, Line, and Sinker. So it starts with, and I loved this, it starts with like a prologue of like months of like texting conversation back and forth between Hannah and Fox. And so it was established that they had been like talking daily for like 6 months through text messages. And that really made like their friendship really solid for me. And like, I liked that when they were like reunited, like we already knew that they had like this really solid friendship and that they already cared about each other. And I feel like I could have totally read like an entire book of just like their text conversations. Like, I don't know. I just felt like you could tell the chemistry between them during the texts. And I just liked their banter back and forth. And so like, I thought that was a really great way to start the book. So the book kicks off and Hannah is back in LA and she's doing her like movie production assistant thing. She still has her crush on her director boss, Sergi. We knew this from the first book. She's been pining after him for years. And then she also wants to start making like more moves in her career to go from like a production assistant to like working on the music scores for movies. So she suggests Westport as this filming location for the film that they're currently working on. Sergi is likes it. And so basically like Hannah gets to go back to Westport to reunite with her sister and with Fox. So then we have like the setup of her telling Piper about her going back to Westport. And then like conveniently we learn that like during the time that Hannah will be in town, Brendan's parents will be staying in Brendan and Piper's guest room. So like, guess whose guest room she's going to be staying in? Like, obviously like Fox has a second bedroom. And so she's going to be staying with him. And I was excited when I read that. I was like, oh my gosh, because I love like close proximity in romance books. Like I love when the 2 main characters are basically being like trapped together with like all of this sexual tension. So I felt like the book was going to like get off to like a really good start. And I loved that they were basically going to be trapped in an apartment together. So that's all set up. She knows where she's going to be staying and she's excited to see everybody again. So Hannah and the film crew, they take a bus to Westport. And it's like this whole thing when they get to town, she's standing and the bus like slams to a stop and she was like trying to talk to Sergi during this and like she falls and it's a whole thing, but he's helping her off the bus and Fox is there to like pick her up from the bus stop to like take her back to his apartment. And then so the seed is like kind of planted of Sergi like starting to notice Hannah, but really kind of only like noticing her because this like other guy is like picking her up from the bus. And so it felt like it was going to be kind of like a love triangle thing starting, but it didn't quite like go in that direction. We get back to Fox's apartment, and initially I liked his like point of view during the book, because like we already knew that he was like falling for Hannah from like their 6-month like friendship, and he's surprised that she like likes who he is as a person versus just like a one-night stand, which is like when he talks a lot about how like that's like all people see him as. So he's kind of grappling with like his feelings, and like it was nice. He bought all of this stuff to like make her stay at the apartment more comfortable. And I thought that was like a really nice, sweet gesture. But in the start of the book, we also see that she's like still really interested in Sergei, and she isn't really thinking of Fox that way, but there's like undertones that she's into him, obviously. And there is this really sweet moment where they're like kind of talking, like this is like all within like the first like 10%, I don't know. But they're like kind of like talking about like trying to make Sergei jealous, and she's like, oh, we could like pretend like we're sleeping together. And Fox is like, well, you don't want my reputation mixed in with yours. And she's like, and just for the record, I would be honored to fake sleep with you, sword, reputation, and all. So I thought that was nice, like her showing like, I don't care about your past, I do like you. Well, as a friend, but obviously more. So still kind of like setting up the like plot of the book. So like we have like an entire week go by where Fox is like out on the boat because he's a fisherman and he's fishing, and Hannah's been working on the film. So like we don't have like any interaction with them, or like for the first week that she's there. And so she goes to like this crew party, and like Piper dresses her up and everything, like so that she'll get noticed at the party. And she's there and she's like having fun and drinking and dancing. And then Fox shows up like after his fishing trip, and I was super shocked when she like noticed him and like went up to him and kissed him like right away. And this is like chapter 7, like this is like I don't know, like 20%ish into the book, and they already had their first kiss and at this party, and I was just like, oh, we're doing this, like we're like jumping right into like their like physical connection, like oh okay. But then it didn't last long at all. Like the moment was kind of over. Fox was under the impression that she was like trying to make Sergei jealous. And so, but the first kiss had already happened so early on in the book. And so I thought that they were going to end up being like doing this whole like friends with benefits type thing throughout the book. And then like, you know, eventually admit their feelings, like after they had like maybe been hooking up for a while, like during the book. But that totally did not happen. Like there were so many moments where there would be like sexual tension moments between the both of them, but then like nothing would happen. Like it wouldn't lead anywhere, and it would stop before anything actually happened. And it felt like it was just like this same cycle, like over and over again. And throughout the book, this same cycle kept happening up until like the 70% mark, where they like actually admitted their feelings to each other, and then they like finally ended up having sex. But I was just surprised that it took that long for that to happen, because in the first book, like Piper and Brendan, I feel like were immediately like, let's do this. But I mean, like obviously different characters, different like setup and everything. But like with the first kiss, that like soon in the book, I was just expecting things to like really like jump off like immediately. But honestly, after like the initial setup of the story, like the first kind of like 20%, like first 10 or so chapters, I just didn't feel like there was really anything like crazy that happened throughout the rest of the book. Like we had all of this setup and all of this kind of like setup for all of this drama, and then everything was just kind of like normal. Like I feel like I wanted more drama and I wanted more like high stakes situations, but it was just kind of them like kind of like just living their lives. Like she's working on the film, you know, he's doing his fisherman stuff. She's you know, talking to her grandmother and like doing all these things. Like it was just all very like normal, and like there really wasn't any like drama happening. So I feel like the majority of the book was full of like just a lot of Fox thinking about his insecurities. And I felt like we just kept harping on the fact that he used to be such a big womanizer, and that he didn't feel like he could change. And that's how everybody sees him, and there's no way he could possibly not be that. But like, oh, he has feelings for Hannah that he's never had for anybody before, but then he keeps trying to push the feelings away. And like at some point during the book when I was reading it, I was just kind of like, like, okay, yeah, like I understand that everybody sees you this way and like that's how you see yourself and like you feel like this is like almost like expected of you at this point. But I was like, we don't really need to keep like harping on this like every single chapter and like every few pages being like saying the exact same thing, the same sentiment, like just in different ways. Like, I don't know. At some point, I was kind of like, yeah, I get it. It's kind of the same thing where it was like the same cycle over and over again, where like things would like start kind of picking up between them and then like they would like pull away. And it was just kind of like the same thing over and over again. And I kept being like, stop. Like, you know that like you could just, you know, tell her how you feel. And then, like I said, they mentioned that they admitted like their feelings like 70% through and it all looks good. Like everything's gonna kind of start wrapping up and like, but then obviously we're gonna have like a big conflict like near the end that they're gonna work through. But the conflict, of course, has to be like his insecurities, like again. Like at some point I was just kind of over here like, I was getting a little annoyed by his insecurities. And so like after they have like their relationship like breakthrough, he goes to leave on like this 5-day fishing trip. And before they leave for this trip, Brendan is like, you're captaining this one. And this was also going to be like supposed to be like a big breakthrough moment with like his self-confidence, because he wasn't sure if he could like handle the responsibility or if people would like see him like in like a captain role. Oh, and that's another thing with this book is like, I feel like in the first one, we got to see like kind of Brendan sometimes like out on the water and like some of like his inner dialogue when he was like out like doing his like job. And I kind of wanted more with that with Fox. Like, I feel like it would kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm leaving for 5 days or 3 days. And then he would just be back. Like we wouldn't have like any like story plot or any sort of like inner dialogue or anything from him or any chapters from him like actually being out there. And I kind of missed that. Like I actually liked that from the first book. So basically they're back in the harbor and we like learn that like the trip went well. But when they're back in the harbor, like some of his shipmates were basically just kind of like giving him shit. And then they were kind of like, he was like just back to square one where he's like, oh, I can't do this. I can't be with Hannah. Like, what was I thinking? Like, he was just spooked so easily. And then he like goes back to their bar and to like where Hannah's waiting for him. And he gets back and like she sees him and she basically was like, knows that he's spooked. And they like break up. He goes and like stays with his mom, and like his mom did have like a small portion in the book like earlier where like Hannah met her. Like I thought it was nice that she got to like meet his mom during that part and like that kind of like she got to see like kind of understand him a little bit more. But so he goes and he like stays with his mom and like talks to her, and then like he falls asleep and it's the next day and like he had like this kind of like breakthrough and he realizes like, what the fuck am I doing? And then we think that like he's gonna have to have like this big like dramatic thing to like get Hannah back because she's supposed to be like on the bus going back to LA, and he's calling her or his phone dies and so he gets home and she's just there, like just kind of like waiting for him. And they just like make up. Like we didn't even have like this big like dramatic scene of him like having to like chase her down to get her back. Like in the first book, like Brendan had to like fly to LA to get Piper back, and they're like being reunited like seemed just so much more like grandiose. But which is funny because when I was reading the first book, when I was reading that part near the end, I remember being like, this is a little dumb, like just call her, and like, because they had like a difference that like you could have just called her and like cleared it up. And so in the first book, I was kind of like, this whole like grand gesture is a little dumb. But now that like in this book, I didn't get like this big grand gesture, I kind of am like, well, now I changed my mind about how I felt in the first one, because I'm like, I kind of wanted like this big like him having to like chase her down, or like having to like chase the bus down, or like fly to LA to like get her back. Like, I don't know. I wanted a bigger like reconnection moment for them. But it's kind of interesting because like Hannah refers to Piper as being very like leading lady material. And she was very much like that in the first book. Like she's very like outgoing, and like, so it kind of makes sense that she would get like this grand like ending to the book where like there's this huge gesture that he like, you know, has like this big dramatic thing. He has to like go to LA and all this stuff. And kind of with like Hannah and Fox, they're kind of, you know, they're kind of like they're kind of seen as like side characters. So I don't know if she like wrote their makeup as like more like toned down because like they're not like crazy wild characters, like kind of like Piper was, which is also kind of funny because with this book, like in the beginning of the book, Hannah had talked about how she like felt like she wasn't like leading lady material, and she always kind of felt like she was like a supporting character, and she like wanted to take more of like a front row stand in her life and like be a leading lady and like in her life and her career. And so we harped on that for like a little bit, but then I feel like that plotline kind of just got like pushed aside a little bit. And then we really just only focused on like Fox's issues with like the rest of the book, which was important for like their relationship development. But again, it was a lot. But also, I guess in the beginning, like Fox did help Hannah to like kind of gain confidence to like speak up like career wise. And then I guess like in turn, she like helped him realize that he was like worthy of love. But it kind of felt like Fox ended up being like the leading lady of this book instead of Hannah. So just a couple of like little things I want to touch on, like little specific things. Like I did like in the book that everything kind of tied together nicely. Like there were small gestures like Fox, like I said, like buying the things for his apartment, like makes Hannah stay more comfortable. I thought that was like really sweet and nice. And then like we learned that he's been like buying records over their like time that they were talking, like the 6 months or 7 months. And he bought like a record player and, you know, kind of like to be closer to her in that way so they could like listen to music or whatever. And then like I actually liked like their small little hand holding moments, like when they met his mom and like just they were like always just holding hands. And I don't know why. I'm kind of like a sucker for like small things like that in books. Like I think small gestures like hand holding can like almost get me more emotionally invested in a couple than even like a first kiss or like their first time having sex. Like it's the little things. And then I also like how they basically realized that they had just been doing the long distance dating thing for like months before them admitting to their feelings, because they had been talking every day and not seeing other people, and they basically were just in a relationship that whole time without even like realizing it. Oh, so then also like circling back around, I was surprised when the whole crush on Sergei, the director, just wasn't really a thing. Like, I don't know. I was thinking that maybe Hannah and him would like go on a date or something during their time in Westport just to kind of like stir up some drama. But like they barely had like any conversations or any moments. And then when Sergei like did ask her out, she like immediately knew to be like no, because she was like, oh yeah, I have feelings for Fox. So again, like there was like opportunity for like kind of like drama and like higher stakes, like with Sergei being like more present in the book. But he ended up just not being a problem or like a complication at all to the love story, which I was kind of wanting the drama of a love triangle like really badly. Like, I don't know. I just really wanted like her to actually like go on a date with him while there and like then realize like, oh no, I actually really do have feelings for him. And like, I wanted him to like be jealous and like, I wanted it to be a whole thing, but I didn't get my love triangle. So I'll probably just have to read a different book that is specifically based on a love triangle just to kind of like fulfill that need. Okay. So lastly, I want to touch on how much I did actually enjoy that this book was very like music focused. So Hannah's super into music. We knew that from the first one. I love with books, this one didn't have it, but I love when books, like when an author will put together like a playlist of like songs that kind of like inspired them like during like the writing process. But so for this one, she did have like the characters mention songs a lot. Like Hannah would like her and Fox would like mention songs like, oh, this is the song that like how they to fit the mood of how they were feeling and like what things were going on. So it was pretty nice. I actually really liked that. So like I could, you know, kind of like stop reading and like pull up the song that they were talking about. So I could kind of get into the mood like during the moment with them. And then also Hannah is like obsessed with listening to records. And this is mentioned a lot in the book. And so I was like, man, so because like we have like an old this old record player, and like we used to use it, but kind of, you know, fall out of using it. But the book definitely got me back into the mood of like really wanting to like listen to like records again. And so Drake set that back up for me and I started listening to it again. So I was pretty excited by that. I was like, I really like when a book can kind of inspire me to want to do like other things besides read. So those are my thoughts on Hook, Line, and Sinker. The story didn't really go the way I was expecting it to go, like drama-wise and like conflict-wise. But overall, I thought it was still a pretty good read. Like, it was entertaining, and I was obviously rooting for them to be together. So that's a pretty good sign for me in a romance book where I'm like excited for the characters to finally be together. But let me know what you thought of the book in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye!